Welcome to the channel. In this video, I wanted to talk a little bit about the pros and cons of selling sports cards on Facebook Marketplace specifically. Let's get into this. Maybe in the future I'll make a separate video about selling in like Facebook groups, but this is specifically about Facebook Marketplace. I recently had an experience selling a collection that I had bought. I had bought about 60,000 cards on Facebook Marketplace, and it was only $300, which is the reason I had bought these cards. There were boxes and boxes of them. I had started to go through those boxes, and I was starting to pull out some cards, mostly cards for like, dollar box type of things. There was a couple of kind of interesting things. There was a Jose Altuve in-person autograph card, but it wasn't authentic. I don't know if it was real. There was a couple actually. There was 2 or 3 cards, baseball players, that were in-person autographs that weren't authenticated. I still don't know if they're real or not. But for the most part, it was junk stuff, a lot of junk wax era stuff. But I figured for $300, it was worth the risk to go ahead and start looking through 60,000 cards. However, when I bought that, my life wasn't nearly as busy as it became, a little bit later. So I had started to go through those 60,000 cards, and it's a lot of work. I'm telling you, going through 60,000 cards is a lot of work. Back pain. I didn't realize like looking through that many cards could create back pain. Maybe I just wasn't sitting right or something, like hunched over looking at these cards. Like, oh gosh, it was a lot. So I got through some of these boxes of these cards, and eventually I was just like, this is too much for me. I'm wasting some of the time. I have a finite amount of sports card time in my life. I don't want to be spending it all doing this. I had already pulled out a couple hundred, maybe 200 like dollar box cards. I had only looked through maybe half or something of the boxes. It still had a lot left. But it was just like, I am going to post all of these boxes, other than like those 200 cards I had pulled out. I'm going to post all the rest of these back up on Facebook Marketplace. So I put it back up, put it for $800, the same 60,000 cards. And I did have a few, like at the beginning, I had a few biters. I'll buy like this many boxes. I'll buy, whatever boxes of basketball you have. I'll buy whatever football you have. But those conversations kind of just fizzled out. They went nowhere. Like I thought somebody was going to want to buy something, and then eventually like they just stopped communicating, which I have heard from a lot of other people that this is kind of common in Facebook Marketplace. My mom sells like antiques and things she finds at thrift stores and different kind of pieces of art and stuff like this. And she sells a lot on eBay, and she also sells some on Facebook Marketplace. And the one thing that she said too is the exact same experience that I had, is so many people will like nibble, like see what's going on, like start to express an interest in something, and then just suddenly not communicate any further. It seems to be a common occurrence. So anyway, I went through a few of these things, but then eventually there was one buyer who wanted to buy the whole thing. They didn't even want to negotiate the price. We're like 60,000 cards, $800. That sounds fine. That sounds great. I explained to him, I was like, there's a good chance most of these are junk wax era. I've looked through a certain percentage, and these are some of the examples I've found. He's like, no, that's fine. I'm gonna buy it. I'm not a very good salesman. I was almost trying to convince him not to buy it. Like, are you sure? Are you sure? So anyway, he came and he picked up all these cards. I threw in a few extra things for him. I gave him the Jose Altuve autograph card that was inauthenticated that I had found in there, just because, I didn't want to authenticate it myself. And I was like, if you're buying all of these here, you can have a couple of these cool ones that I had found earlier too. I had bought it for $300 and I was selling it for $800. I was already making a profit, even if I didn't keep any of the cards. So I kind of put some of the, gave him back some of the good ones. And like, I've looked through half of these, or, maybe a little less than half of these, and I haven't found, even this originally $300 worth. Maybe there's a gem, and maybe there's a Michael Jordan rookie in that other half I didn't look at, doubtfully. So anyway, I ended up selling this, and it was a good experience. He came over and I gave him all these boxes. It was like 18 or 20 like boxes of cards. I loaded up his truck. He ended up buying a handful of other football cards I had for sale that I, some of them I had already posted on eBay. Some of the others I just had. I was about to post them to eBay, and he bought a handful of those as well. And it was a good experience. It was quite nice. I enjoyed it, and I got to know somebody. We exchanged phone numbers, so if I do have some cards in the future, now that I kind of know what he's looking for, I might just, before I go through the process of posting, I'm gonna be like, hey, by the way, here's a bunch of cards I'm gonna post pretty soon. If you want any of them, let me know. However, I don't necessarily think Facebook Marketplace is a place to go to really have your main strategy. I think it's a good place to go for that kind of bulk thing, the thing that's heavy, that you're not going to want to ship it, because the buyer's going to have to spend most of their money on shipping. If you can find local buyers for stuff that's bulk like that, Facebook Marketplace makes sense. If you're selling just individual cards, I think it's a bit of an annoying space to sell. And the reason I would say, I mean, they don't take any percentage, which is wonderful. So you get to whatever you sell it for is what you sell it for. But one is because you have to be in a specific time and a specific place, and not everybody's reliable. You can set up a time, you can set up a place, and somebody might not show up. You might have wasted your time. And I don't necessarily, for this one that I did end up having him come to my house because I was like, this is just so many boxes. I'd be too much additional time of packing all this stuff up. And then if he didn't show up, then I'd have to unpack it. So it was like, I'm just going to have him come to my house. But I wouldn't do that in general, just for safety issues. I don't want people to know that my address is an address that has sports cards. The address I use for buying and selling on eBay, for example, is not actually my home address. I don't want people to know this address is an address that has sports cards. It's just, incentive for somebody who learns that to know this is a house to target. So I'm going to want to go to, a nearby grocery store parking lot or something like that. But then you have to really rely on that person's timeliness. I could see you set up a time, a place, you go there, you're just waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting. And maybe the person doesn't show up, or maybe they show up late, or, whatever. And there's no recourse for them. If they change their mind or they find a better deal on eBay, they might not even communicate that with you. I think that makes Facebook, as far as a place to do in-person meetups and in-person sales, it creates a lot of unnecessary challenges that I don't think make it worth it. Now, you can, of course, do just regular sales as well through some place like Facebook Marketplace, but it's going to be a place that you have to be more careful about scammers. You could still be selling through things like PayPal goods and services, which has a certain degree of protection for both the buyer and the seller. But eBay or ComC or buysportscards.com or a number of other MySlabs, I think a lot of these places have more clear protections in place for both the buyer and the seller. And that's one of the reasons that some of these places have a higher percentage, that goes to the company itself, because they are creating opportunity, creating something that's a little bit safer. Some place like MySlabs actually doesn't take any percentage, or buysportscards.com doesn't take any percentage, which I think is pretty cool. And I think they are mostly doing that because they're trying to build up a customer base. If they really had a customer base like eBay or ComC does, I don't think they would be a 0% seller's fee forever. But for now they are, so those are good spots. They just don't have the traction. They don't have the number of people there to see your cards. But anyway, because Facebook Marketplace doesn't have some of those protections, there's just a lot more room for scammers to be able to do their thing without having as much, troubles. You can figure out if certain people are trustworthy over time if you are connected through maybe Facebook groups, but that's a separate conversation. I'm talking about Facebook Marketplace. Facebook groups, maybe, you can find some more trustworthy people. You still have some of the issues of potential scammers and things, and less, and less protection than you do in some of the other marketplaces. But at least in those spaces, there's a community, so you can if you can tap into the community, you can start to see the conversations of the community. You get a sense of if people are trustworthy, and there's, other people who have dealt with the same sellers before, so you can get that feedback from sellers. So there's a little bit more trust in that space, but you can't get that nearly as easily in Facebook Marketplace. You're still going to have to be dealing with buyers who you don't know, and there's going to be very limited protection on you. So this is all reasons I think that Facebook Marketplace is really not a place to focus your attention when you're trying to sell sports cards. There can be some opportunities if there's things that are heavy, but generally I would say don't focus yourself in that space. Anyway, that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.